Hey guys, doing another topic video this week, and I asked you on YouTube and I asked you on Twitter, what is a really bad performance you consider in an otherwise very good movie? But before we go into that, I'm going to go ahead and plug my website. It is deepfocuslens.com. I do commission portraits and prints. I'm an artist. So if that's something that you're interested in, you can always go to deepfocuslens.com/shop. If you're interested in a commission or an art print and you have any questions about it, you can always email me. My email is in the description box below. Okay, let's get started. Bad performance in an otherwise good movie. Anne Hathaway in The Dark Knight Rises. Don't get me wrong, I don't hate Anne. However, Catwoman is the most cartoonish character in Nolan's trilogy, and I love that trilogy. I would have liked to have seen her character either more grounded and realistic or not at all. Okay, I will say this. We totally agree in that Anne Hathaway is not a good Catwoman, but I completely disagree with everything else that you say in regards to it. I've been very vocal about how I'm not a big fan of the Nolan trilogy. I reviewed Dark Knight last year, so you can watch that for more on that. But yeah, no, I think that The Dark Knight Rises is a really, really bad film. I think it's easily the worst, and I think one of the worst films that Nolan has ever done. It's just a mess. And Anne Hathaway just didn't really help it. And I think it's actually just her casting. I think she's miscast. I don't think, even at the time, I remember thinking, this isn't a Catwoman type person. Because Anne Hathaway, look, I'm not a fan of her. Though, I mean, she is talented at a certain type of acting, but she's more showbiz. She's more kind of theatrical. You know, I see her more on Broadway or something. Sometimes she can do very good in realism, but for the most part, I think that she's always kind of putting on a performance. That's just more her style. She's more variety show. And also, I just think that Catwoman just needs to ooze a certain sort of sensuality, a sexiness. And I'm sorry, but I don't think Anne Hathaway does. I mean, I don't think people know her for being sexy. I mean, people might say, yeah, she's very pretty. You know, she's got like the big eyes. She's very kind of Disney princessy, but that is not what I look for in a Catwoman. I look for a very feline, sort of, sexy look. Somebody who's slinky and really knows how to use their body, where it's much less put on. You know, like Michelle Pfeiffer was great, for the Tim Burton Batman as Catwoman. I loved her in that. Even in the old Batman, like Adam West cartoon, I really liked Catwoman there because, again, sexy. I think like an Angelina Jolie would be really good in that part. Just somebody who has that kind of lazy lull kind of sexiness. When Anne Hathaway does it, you notice in that first scene where she kind of does the oops, that thing where she kind of goes from putting on a performance to becoming Catwoman. I just didn't buy it. She comes off as trying to be sexy, and that just does not work for me. I don't like the grounded kind of realism of the Nolan trilogy, as you're mentioning here. I think that's actually kind of a big detriment to the whole adaptation of it, and I think it really runs into those problems in the third film, where you have a lot of cartoonish things going on, but it's kind of like, juxtaposed with this realistic world, and it just doesn't work. So I actually like the cartoonishness. I like more kind of the witty banter. For Catwoman, for Batman, I think it works. I always think like a Lauren Bacall would be great as a Catwoman. And she's just got that low voice and she just naturally exudes all that confidence. She'd be perfect. I'm sure I will get some heat for this, but I think that Promising Young Woman is a good, potentially great film with a really bad performance in Carey Mulligan. Oh, really? Okay. The way she delivers the dialogue constantly reminds you that you are listening to a script and not a flowing conversation. The way she interacts with the cast around her feels timed and totally unnatural, and everything around her firing on most cylinders so well makes the areas of her performance that she is lacking stand out even more. I understand she's portraying a damaged person, but the performance is flat and inconsistent for me. I would have loved to have seen what another actress could have done with that role. Oh my God, I totally disagree with this. I so disagree with it. I think Promising Young Woman, you're right here in the sense that, it's a good and it potentially could have been great. I do agree with that. I think it had the potential to be a really, really great film. I reviewed it when it came out. I talked about the areas where I felt it fell short, though one of the places I do not think it fell short in was the casting of Carey Mulligan. If anything, I think she held it together. I love Carey Mulligan. I think she's an actress who, she's made more of a career of more kind of heavy, more dramatic sorts of roles, more kind of critically acclaimed performances of that nature. And I found it really refreshing to see her in a movie where she's not taking herself so seriously. Yes, it's a dark story, but again, it's very much kind of this revenge tale in the style of like a Sleigh Bells album or something of that nature. And I think it's great casting because you don't expect it. You don't expect somebody like Carey Mulligan to be cast in this role. She certainly would have been furthest from my mind. But she has a very unique quality to her. She is getting older, and you sense that in this role for sure. She kind of has a jaded quality to her. She's definitely not innocent. And yet there is a softness to her. And I think that's very important for the character. She needs to be hard. She needs to be very distant from the audience. She is very elusive. We don't really understand her. That's part of the point, part of her appeal, the appeal of Cassie, the character. But yet she has that softness. She's got kind of a youthfulness to her, even though she is, aging a bit. She has kind of those sweet dimples, kind of a almost natural smirk to her that is very appealing, very engaging. But I love how she was able to contrast that with more kind of the roughness of it, or I should say not the roughness, but the hardness of the character, the coldness. I think she did really, really brilliantly. And also it was just nice to see her be funny. I don't see Carey Mulligan being funny, and it's more of an effortless humor, which I was quite surprised by. I also just love her voice. I've talked about that before. She has just a beautiful speaking voice, perfect for the stage, perfect for film. It's very cinematic. Of course, it's better, I think, when she has her natural English accent, but I just love how she delivers some of the lines in this film, kind of that dry sense of humor. One of my favorite lines that she says, just in terms of her delivery, was when she walks away from that guy in the fedora and he's like, "You're not even that hot." And she turns around and she's like, "You're not exactly dropping panties yourself, Paul." And I just love that. I want to say that. So yeah, I disagree, but to each his own. Oh God. No. You guys are breaking my heart with some of your responses. Ugh, Kim Novak in Vertigo. Oh, she was as stiff as oak, and her emotional scenes were very unconvincing. I heard Hitchcock originally wanted Vera Miles for the part, but she was unavailable for some reason. He should have waited for her to become available. Oh my God. I disagree very, 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 very strongly with this. Extremely. The reason that Vera Miles is not in the film is because she became pregnant, and Hitchcock was not happy about that, understandably, so he had to recast. Though Vera Miles is in the film. She has a cameo. She is the portrait of Carlotta. She's playing Carlotta in the portrait. So, fun fact. But gosh, I think that Kim Novak, if anything, I've spent so much of the last few years talking about Vertigo and trying to promote Kim Novak and how underrated her performance is. I think she has the hardest part by far here. Everybody talks about Jimmy Stewart, and yes, he is wonderful. I think this is maybe his best role, his most challenging role from an emotional standpoint. But I think what she has to do here is, she's playing two roles, and she does them so well where really it does feel like two completely different people. When I first saw this film, I kind of had to, I was like a teenager, I had to kind of ask myself, I'm like that's her, but is it a different character? It really kind of tripped me up. She really changed everything and was very believable in that. But picking Vera Miles, she couldn't be more wrong, I think. I'm so glad that she got pregnant and she didn't have to play the role, because it would have been a completely different film. I don't think it would have been nearly as captivating. Vera Miles is a very good actress, but she's more kind of girl next door. There's a reason, I think, why in Psycho she does not play the main part. She does not play the Janet Leigh part. She's not as icy and alluring as her. She's, again, more kind of girl next door. She reminds me more of like Midge in Vertigo, not Madeline. With Vertigo, Kim Novak is, yes, she's playing a part. She's literally playing a part in the movie, and she has to be this very kind of sexy, mysterious, femme fatale type of character, and she changes the way she walks, and it is funny. It's a little bit, well, not a little bit, it's definitely over the top. It's very, a lot of the dialogue in the first half of Vertigo, I think, is very funny because it's very cheeky. It's meant to be sappy and romantic and in the ways that most movies of the time were. And, it's sort of poking fun at it. But you do sense there are several times where you see that facade kind of melting away, where she breaks character, especially right before she has to have the, spoiler alert, I'm sorry, before she has to have the fake suicide sequence, and Jimmy Stewart's trying to stop her. He grabs her and she breaks character. Her voice changes and she goes, "Look, it wasn't supposed to happen this way. It shouldn't have happened this way." And that right there is her real self. That is Judy. And when she plays Judy, I feel somebody who has been taken advantage of. She's had a rough life, she's had a sad life, and she has you know, some deep pain in her, so much so that she's willing to completely change her identity for somebody else. And I think she plays that very, very well. Kind of like that subtle pain of somebody who really doesn't love themselves is heartbreaking. And I think it gets better with viewings. So yeah, no, I think that it's brilliant. Yes, the Madeline character is kind of funny and removed. And yes, meant to be very mysterious, but again, in a cheeky sort of way. And then when you see the real character, I find it completely convincing. Vertigo is one of my favorite movies of all time. So again, I guess we disagree, but oh, you hurt my heart there. Leonardo DiCaprio in Gangs of New York. I felt like he was still struggling to shake off his heartthrob period in this film. I thought he tried far too hard to keep up with DDL and prove he belonged, but he just wasn't at that level yet. Well, I'll argue he was never at that level, and I'll argue that it's not about shaking off a heartthrob period. I just don't think he's that great of an actor. But I've talked about that so much in other videos, so I won't, bore you there. But yeah, I mean, I think when you go up against somebody like Daniel Day-Lewis, you got to be on your game. And I think that you can go up against Daniel Day-Lewis. I mean, Phantom Thread is an example. I don't even think he gave the best performance in that film. It's a very good performance. I don't think it's the best. But when he plays a part where he's real physical and he has to be really, the focal point of the film, like a lot of scene chewing, like that character in Gangs of New York, it's very hard for other people to keep up. Just the same with like There Will Be Blood. Very hard for other actors to be able to keep up with him. And unfortunately, the problem with Leo, as I've said so many times, is like there's no real depth to it. It's just a lot of like viscera, ranting and raving with no real danger or a sense of volatility that I feel really, sinks the teeth into the role. I've always felt that with Leo DiCaprio. And I think there's a real disconnect when you look at Daniel Day-Lewis, who can go all the way and really get in there in a way that Leo can't. When you put them in the same scene, unfortunately, that just shows in a performance with Leo DiCaprio. Yeah, you watch all those scenes, Daniel is just captivating. Just captivating. And you go back to Leo and it's flat. It's very flat. But again, like that's just the difference of when you have a really great actor in a room with somebody who maybe isn't quite at that level, a lot reveals itself, unfortunately. And it's not just Leo in that film. Cameron Diaz is not good either. Which is unfortunate because, I think that Leo is good in certain films, but I think he works better with more physical comedy. I think he works better in like Tarantino films. And Cameron Diaz, I think she is very talented. She has been able to show that she has a lot of depth. She's not just some girl next door. She's great with comedy. She has kind of like a Jennifer Aniston sort of timing at times, but yet she can play real depth, like I love her in Being John Malkovich. I've loved her in Her Shoes. But I think that this was just out of her element. Both of them were just really out of their element. And it's unfortunate because Gangs of New York is a mess of a movie and Daniel Day-Lewis is the glue that holds it together. Barry Lyndon is my favorite Kubrick film. Good choice. Ryan O'Neal's performance has always come off as wooden to me. For the most part, it's serviceable because the character almost has a blank slate quality to him. And the rest of the cast is extraordinary. But he's lacking when it matters most. The scene where he's crying at his son's deathbed, yikes. I disagree with this one as well. But I'm glad to see that you've given love to Barry Lyndon. Barry Lyndon, I think, is maybe Kubrick's most underrated film, or one of them. I actually really like Ryan O'Neal in the film, and Ryan O'Neal's not somebody that I consider a great actor. I don't know many people who think of Ryan O'Neal as a great actor. But I think he really works for this kind of performance, as you say, because he has kind of a blank slate quality that's very important, I think, to this particular type of film. A kind of removal from the characters is very important. And Ryan O'Neal, he has a quality of, yes, being wooden, and also not necessarily very charismatic. And I like that about Barry Lyndon, because, he's this character who's gone through so much. And he goes through all these ordeals to get to the, rise to wealth and then fall, of course. And yet he's somebody who's kind of ridden on the backs of other people, taking credit for other things, just happened to be at the right place at the right time. He is not particularly special. Maybe he learns to be resourceful, but he's not particularly special. And in the second half, where we see his downfall, we see all of those weaknesses come to the surface more, as we saw at the beginning of the film. And I don't know, I think it really, really works because you see more how pathetic he is, and that pathetic quality really comes out, but in a way I feel that is realistic. But I also find it very tragic. I think the power of Barry Lyndon, well, there's a lot of things about it, but it's a funny film. I think it's funny. It's satirical. You know, it's, again, very removed. As I said, it has like it sounds like a nature documentary with the narration on top of it. And that's meant to be, I think, very cheeky, but just kind of the remove where everything looks like a painting that's kind of frozen. And it reminds you of like when you're in a museum and you see these people and it's like, were they really great? Were they really that charismatic, or were they just people? You know, they probably were just people, even, you know, great royals or whatever. And so that, for whatever reason, has always just made sense to me. And I do think that emotionally, he actually does pretty good. I think the scene that you're talking about here, where he's crying when his son is dying, I found that to be really, really powerful. That's a heartbreaking scene, and I think he does a really good job with it. I'm curious as to why you say that you struggle with that particular scene, because I think it's gut-wrenching for both of them, both him and the mother. I love Barry Lyndon so much, though, and, you know, I've reviewed it. It's a popular review of mine, but if you haven't seen it, you know, check it out and see for yourself. You know, figure out what you think of Ryan O'Neal's performance. I personally think it works. But that is the video, you guys. Thank you so much for answering in. I really enjoy hearing your responses. So we'll do another one soon. Here are my Patreon supporters. You guys are wonderful. I love you so much. And if you want to be a patron, the link to support that is below, as well as my social media information. You can watch more videos here, and you can subscribe if you'd like. Catch you next time.